time! Finally, I'm gonna give you guys a full presentation, PowerPoint presentation on Sonic 06. The lore, the story, the timeline, everything that I know about this game, which is a lot because I've been obsessed with it for like a decade. So everything that I know about Sonic 06, you guys are about to know, whether you like it or not. You don't have a choice. So, Sonic 06, what happened and why and when? Or when and why? Because the when is going to be very important here. I have the actual written out timeline in a different program that I will bring up to show you guys at the end of this, because it is a little confusing, and I couldn't get it to, like, format properly in a PowerPoint presentation, so I'm just gonna open Obsidian and show you guys directly what it looks like, and then kind of go over it. So, alright. Sonic 06. What the fuck is Sonic 06? It was the colloquial known, it's Sonic the Hedgehog from 2006, colloquial known as Sonic 06, was intended to be a reboot of the franchise and incidentally released for the 15th anniversary of the series. A lot of people, that's a misconception. A lot of people thought it was released, that it was made specifically for the 15th anniversary, but however, the 15th anniversary being when it was is actually part of the reason why it was so rushed out, because Sega wanted to get it out, or Sonic Team, I don't know if it was Sonic, it was rushed out in time for the anniversary. It was originally supposed to be a mass reboot of the series and its lore, and that's why it's kind of the point where a lot of stuff happened. There's so much, that's why there's a reset. But they rushed it to meet the 15th anniversary, and thus caused it to be unfinished, and led to it being considered the worst Sonic game ever created. Now, as of recently, as of the last few years, that title has been debated. It was not, for a long period of time, it was widely and generally considered the worst Sonic game in existence. But again, some games that have come out since have fought it for that title, but at the point, you know, it's generally still considered the worst game. It was panned by fans, Sega themselves. They tried to bury the game entirely. If you were inundated into the Sonic fandom, you know that Sega did their damnedest to forget that it existed. I believe they even released an attempt at a chronological timeline once, and just completely threw Sonic 06 off to the side. They're just like, that one doesn't exist, it's not canon, forget that one existed, it's over there, don't worry about that one. And they even went to the effort of delisting it entirely from various retails and online stores because it was such an immaculate failure. And that was at a time that they were trying to kind of reboot the franchise, revive it a little bit, give it a little bit of oomph, and so they delisted a lot of their lower reviewed games at the time, and Sonic 06 was obviously one of them. It does, however, obviously, hi Freya, have a cult following, and has since recently gained more love and appreciation by the fans. A massive increase to Mephiles specifically. But just for the record, I loved Mephiles before everybody got on board with him all of a sudden recently. As I said, I've loved this idiot for 10 fucking years. Maybe even longer, 20 years. I've loved him almost the entire fucking time. Yes, I'm being a hipster about this. Cause I can. Also, ignore that. That's not supposed to be there. I am the true Mephiles stan! I've loved him this entire time, even when this game was widely panned and hated! I loved it when everybody else hated it! So fuck you guys! All because of that damn laugh. But also, I would like to, also, in addition to that damn laugh, he was also one of the only, to date, still, Sonic villain to actually succeed in getting that damn hedgehog. He is the only, like, video game villain, for the most part, that actually succeeded in killing the main character. So, He deserves that love. Alright, so, going into the actual Sonic 06 game itself and the routes. Sonic 06 is played in 3-character routes, as a lot of games in this era kind of were. You play the routes for Sonic, Shadow, and Silver, who I believe this was Silver's initial introduction to the series. You also get Blaze, but Blaze was apparently introduced in a different game and brought to this one. She's also in the comics. I'll get more into Blaze and her situation and story and into so yeah, she's from Sonic Rush, and that's actually relevant, but we'll get into that later. They all have their own storylines that intersect at different points of the story and all connect at the end for the final curtain call. Sonic's route. So obviously the main route, Sonic's route, focuses on the main kind of overall story because, you know, he's the main character. And his route... I feel like I forgot to disclaim this. If you've never played Sonic 06 and know nothing about this story and don't want spoilers until we play it or whatever, why are you here? Obviously, this is going to be all of the spoils. Everything. I am going to go into every single detail about Sonic 06. So you're going to know the beginning, the middle, the end. So if you don't want spoilers for this 20-year-old game... you're gonna. Anyways, Sonic's route focuses on Princess Elise and constantly rescuing her from Eggman. That is it. That's the entire thing. He spends the entire time just rescuing Elise. I'm gonna get more into that later too. But that's his entire fucking route is just, oh no, Elise has been kidnapped again. Shadow. Debatably the favorite amongst all of the routes. The favorite. Everybody loves Shadow. Shadow does Shadow things. Shadow's route focuses on Mephiles and stopping him from rejoining Iblis and achieving his goals. Shadow has most of the main interactions with Mephiles himself, up until the final curtain call, obviously. And then you have Silver and Blaze. Silver's route focuses on what happens in the future and trying to prevent Crisis City. And being rid of the flames of disaster that caused it. So, he interacts with Mephiles, but most of it is tracking down what he calls the Iblis Trigger. Which again, I will get into. So, game route order. Timelines by character. So, I have split this presentation up into 2 different formats. The first format is going to be the game route order. How you learn the timeline by character, by the route. So, how the game gives you the explanation of the timeline. And this is part of why it gets very confusing, is because it's these anachronological, split off individual versions of what happens. So obviously a lot of time travel stuff happens, and it can be very confusing, and this is why a lot of people are confused about this story. The second version, I will be going through it chronologically. The entire story broken down by what happens when chronologically in the various different timelines and the characters that interact at those moments. So it goes over what happens specifically when, rather than just as a whole, instead of the splintered off versions. So, starting with Sonic's route. Sonic starts with the Solaris Festival, where Eggman attacks Soliana during their big festival to celebrate the sun god Solaris. At that point, Elise is kidnapped, and Sonic meets with Tails to go, hey, the princess of this place has gotten kidnapped, and we gotta go rescue her. I need your help with that. And so Sonic goes and rescues Elise, and that is the Dusty Desert and the Egg Cerberus attack. Another note, I was going to include all of the major boss fights and locations, and I did do that to a degree, but it does get very fucking confusing because there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of people going to the same place at different times, fighting a boss at a different time that doesn't fucking make sense. Even as somebody who has like researched this extensively, there's a lot of shit that doesn't actually line up. So I did my best, but the game didn't, and that's... I can only do so much. The game didn't do its best, so I did my best. But yeah, so that is the Dusty Desert Egg Cerberus boss battle. After that is when I believe they return to Soliana after Sonic rescues Elise. That's where Silver is first introduced, and Elise is kidnapped again, while Sonic is distracted by Silver. After the Sonic Silver battle, Sonic meets up with Knuckles, where he learns that Eggman has sent a message and said, "Hey, I got your princess. Bring me the Chaos Emerald, and I'll give her back." And obviously, you know, they're just like, "Yeah, that's bullshit, but we're gonna go anyways." And so that is when all three of them head to White Acropolis, which is Eggman's base, and they learn that Eggman is attempting to revive the Solaris project that Soliana's royal family and scientists attempted 10 years ago. And that is when Sonic is then sent to the future. So, at that point, Sonic has been sent 200 years into the future, into what is now known as Crisis City. The world is destroyed. He meets with Shadow, and he's just like, "Hey, why the fuck are you here?" And they work together to find another Chaos Emerald so that they can go back to the present. They discover that Sonic goes missing for obviously those 200 years. Elise dies, Iblis is released, Crisis City happens. This is the original timeline. So the Sonic and Shadow meet at the volcano to hunt down more the second Chaos Emerald, because Shadow already has one. And that is when they first meet Iblis, and they fight Iblis. And once Iblis is defeated, the two have both Chaos Emeralds. They use a double Chaos Control, and Sonic and his crew, as well as Rouge, who's with Shadow, obviously, goes back to the present. And this is the start of Timeline 2. Because now he's been sent back, he's no longer he's no longer lost to time, so he has a chance to change the situation. Elise is still kidnapped, because of course she is, and that is the train chase, because Eggman is for some reason on a train and uses the Soliana train to attempt to distract him so that he can get away. That's when Silver also appears, while he is attempting to, because train levels are fun. Well, yeah, I mean, you're not actually on a train, you're just trying to, like, track down a train and keep it from exploding, and tracking down Elise, but halfway through, Silver interrupts again, Shadow interrupts that, and Sonic goes to, once again, rescue Elise, where they then return to Soliana. So Sonic takes Elise back to Soliana, she goes back to the castle, everything's good, fine dandy, except Eggman comes back again and he's just like, "Hey Elise, meet me or I'm gonna destroy your city!" And so she obviously goes, "Yep, this is a good idea," and so she goes to fucking meet with Robotnik again. And that's when, you know, they head to the egg carrier. And of course, Sonic is off doing Sonic stuff, so Tails has to go get him, and he's like, "Hey, the princess is kidnapped by Robotnik again." He's like, "God fucking damn it." So he's gotta go capture her again. Re-rescue her for what, the third fucking time? And while he is on the way to the egg carrier to go rescue her for like the third, fourth, fifth time, Silver once again shows up, except this time instead of saying, hey, you destroyed my future, he's like, hey, we need to save the future. I'm joining you now. And so they join him, except while they are on the way to the egg carrier to rescue the princess, the egg carrier explodes, and Elise dies again, and thus releasing Iblis in the incorrect form again. And this is the third timeline. So, Elise is fucking dead again. So, Sonic and Silver, much like Shadow and Sonic earlier, use a double chaos control to once again open a portal through time. Sonic goes back a few minutes so that he can go save Elise, while Silver returns to the future because Sonic's like, hey, you've got a future to save, go do that. I got this. And so Sonic goes back. He goes back to before the egg carrier takes off. He rescues Elise the third time, and they have a nice, lovely little walk through Kingdom Valley. And everything is fine, and she's alive, and the future is saved, yada yada blah blah. And that's the end of Sonic's route. Just at this point. Yeah, we'll get into that! And so that is what you play as Sonic, is Elise is kidnapped. Go rescue her. Oh no, Elise fucking died. Time to time travel! Oh, Elise is kidnapped! Time to go rescue her! Yay! So now we get into Shadow's route, which is the best route, because it's the route that gets into Mephiles' stuff. So, the beginning of Shadow's route is one of the coolest pre-rendered cutscenes in all of Sonic. I know that most people consider Sonic Unleashed, the pre-rendered cutscene beginning at the beginning of that one, to be the kind of the height of Sonic cutscenes. And I will give them this, it is really good, but I also really, really like the cutscene at the beginning of Shadow's route as well, because, you know, it has Shadow. And so, the beginning of Shadow's route is Rouge has broken into Robotnik's laboratory and stolen the scepter, and Gun has sent Shadow to go retrieve her and assist her. And so that is what he does. She's like, hey, I got this scepter thing. I don't know what it is, but the doctor wants it, so I have it now. And and then Shadow meets up with her at White Acropolis, and he's like, what the fuck are you doing? And that happens. So with that, Eggman gives chase. He's just like, hey, you stole my shit! Except in the struggle to get the scepter back, Rouge drops the scepter when she is attacked by robots, and Shadow, choosing to save her over catching the scepter, ends up with the scepter hitting the ground, shattering, and that is how Mephiles is released. And Mephiles appears, and he's just like, ah, Shadow, I know you, and now I'm going to send you to the future! Have fun in Oblivion! And so Shadow and Rouge get sent to the future by Mephiles. And so that is how Shadow gets 200 years in the future in Crisis City. And Sonic arrives shortly after that, being sent there by Robotnik, by the Solaris Project. And they realize we're gonna have to get some Chaos Emeralds to do some Chaos Control to get back to the present. So Sonic and crew go off and do their search for a Chaos Emerald, and Shadow and Rouge go search for Chaos Emerald, and at that point they find a not so broken down, but definitely, worse for wear 200 years Omega. And he's on standby mode, and deactivate him. And then they get their emerald, and they go to meet Sonic at the volcano. And once again, that is where they battle Iblis. So after the Iblis battle, and they do the double chaos control, Sonic and crew and Rouge return to the present. However, Shadow does not. So when Rouge returns to the present and Shadow's not with her, she calls on Omega in the present and says, "Hey, I'm gonna need you to go on standby for like 200 years with this Chaos Emerald and help Shadow in the future." And so she gives him the Chaos Emerald that they found, and he goes in standby mode for 200 years. And then it goes back to Shadow, who, the reason that he did not exit the portal with them is because Mephiles showed up. And so Shadow is battling Mephiles. And mid-battle is when Omega reactivates and joins the battle, and they quote-unquote defeat Mephiles at that time. And, well, they don't defeat him. They, once you beat the battle, Mephiles returns to the present, and Omega and Shadow jump through the portal following after him and return to Timeline 2. And when Shadow returns to the present, he's just like, "Hey, what the fuck is up with that whole Scepter Mephiles thing?" And so he goes to meet with Eggman, because he believes he has information on it, because obviously he had the scepter, so he must know what's happening there. And that is the train chase again. And while after he goes to meet with Eggman, he realizes Sonic and Silver are there and goes and interrupts the fight between Sonic and Silver and says, "Hey, you go rescue the princess, I'll handle this." And so, after a short conversation and Silver gets kicked in the back of the head with a roundhouse kick, Silver and Shadow then use a double chaos control, because Silver also has a Chaos Emerald, and they go back in time to find Mephiles' origin. So instead of going 200 years in the future, they have gone 10 years in the past to the original creation of the Solaris Project. And this goes back to, I believe, it's White Acropolis before Robotnik takes it over. It seems like it's the same laboratory, but it's kind of somewhat unclear. I don't know if there's two labs, or it seems like Robotnik takes over the White Acropolis laboratory, because it seemed like it was originally the laboratory that the royal family of Soliana used. And so, going back 10 years in time, they realize what happens, and this is a big point, is Solaris was the sun god of Soliana. He had, in previous generations, gifted his flame to the royal family to protect the flame and so that he would, protect them. However, being idiot humans that they are, they decided to experiment on it and try to extract its time travel powers, and so therefore they corrupted the god. And in a last-ditch attempt to protect both himself and the humans that he once adored, who have now betrayed him, he separated himself. And that is what creates that's what creates Iblis and Mephiles. Mephiles is the mind of Solaris. Iblis is the flame, the body, the powers. And so when they are separated, they separate. Silver goes after Iblis, Shadow goes after Mephiles to seal them. And so Shadow seals Mephiles, and at that time, Mephiles is just like, "Your face! I will remember you, and I will kill you in the future when I get out of here." And that is why Mephiles knew him at the beginning of the route, is because time travel. So he meets back up with Silver. Silver does Silver things, and then they once again return to the present, back to Timeline 2 again. Omega is tracking down Mephiles in the present. There's a little bit of clash between them, and Shadow and Rouge meet back up with him, and at that time, Right, I forgot an entire conversation between Mephiles and Shadow. So during Mephiles' initial fight with Shadow, is the part where Mephiles is just like, join me! Or be sealed, because in the future, much like they did to me, the humans will also betray you, and they will seal you away. And Shadow's just like, I don't give a fuck. And he's just like, if the world decides to turn on me, then I will fight as I always have. And so, meeting back up with Omega in the present, in Timeline 2, is when Omega reveals that he's the one that seals Shadow in the future. And so, obviously, that's a little feelsy. A line's from 06? Yes, that line is 06. A lot of iconic lines of Shadows came from 06. If the world chooses to fight me, you know, betray me, then I'll fight as I always have. That's from Sonic 06, and the scene where he, like, takes off his inhibitors and busts through a bunch of enemies, that's from 06. I'll get to that in a minute. I'm supposed to be ignoring you guys. Anyways, yes, so Omega reveals that he's the one that steals Shadow in the future. It's an feelsy moment, and Rouge, you know, is just like, hey, we're a team. No matter what happens, I'll always be there for you. And he's like, yeah, I know. Another thing about Sonic 06 is that I, and a lot of the fandom, consider this to be kind of the truest moment, the best of Shadow. This really is the best of Shadow, because he's both still, you know, the edgy, you know, loner, fucking overpowered edgelord that he fucking is, but also, he has a team, and you can tell he cares about that team in multiple different ways. And, like, that team also cares about him. And so he's not just like, I'm a lone wolf and I don't care about anyone, that he's kind of gone that way in more recent stuff. He's just like, no, Rouge and Omega are my team. I care about them. You know, Omega's potential betrayal actually obviously hurts him. And so, like, this is kind of another reason that I like this game for its lore, is because this is kind of the height of Shadow. So after that, Shadow hunts down Mephiles again. There's another battle between them. That is when he removes his inhibitors, and he attempts to seal Mephiles again. Because he has that information now, he has the scepter, he knows how to do that now from going back in time, and he attempts it again. Except that, this time, Mephiles breaks out, and the scepter is destroyed. And he's just like, that worked 10 years ago, it's not gonna fucking work now! Because he's obviously got a few of the Chaos Emeralds now. He's much stronger than he was then. He's not newly broken off from Solaris. And so the scepter is not going to work again. And it gets destroyed. And so that is the end of Shadow's route, is Mephiles breaking free and escaping. I'm asking my doctor to do this. Remove the cringe inhibitors. Why did Mephiles choose a hedgehog form? Because he stole Shadow's shadow. So I probably should have covered this. So I will answer this one now. When he initially broke out of the scepter at the beginning of Shadow's route, he was just a fog, gooey form, and so when he broke out, he stole Shadow's shadow, and that's why Mephiles looks like Shadow. Let me actually go back to that. Yes, and so that's why Mephiles looks like a grayed out version of Shadow, because he stole Shadow's shadow, so he stole Shadow's form. Basically, everything Mephiles does is anti-Shadow. Because Shadow fucked him up. And so, but when he turns crystalline form, obviously he still has, you know, he turns crystalline, but it's still the same Shadow form underneath. then we get to Silver's route. So, unlike the other two, Silver's route starts 200 years in the future in Crisis City. The world has been destroyed, he was born into it, and all he wants is to save his present. And so it starts out with him kind of monologuing about Trunks the Hedgehog. He's kind of Trunks the Hedgehog. And so it kind of starts out with him monologuing, kind of looking over Crisis City, and being like, you know, the tornadoes, the fires, it's destroyed everything. He's constantly battling Iblis in the future, but he can never obviously win. And so after another fight with Iblis, and Blaze shows up and she's like, he's appeared again. So the two go off and fight Iblis again. And after that battle is when Mephiles shows up. And he's just like, hey, if you want to fix your present, you're gonna need the Iblis trigger. And so Mephiles takes them back to the lab and explains the Iblis trigger. And the day of disaster caused by the Iblis trigger and is the cause of Crisis City and what happens. And if you want to save your future, you must go back to the past and destroy the Iblis trigger. And so that's the story that they give. And so Mephiles, with a Chaos Emerald, opens another portal to the past and sends them back to the present. And so I'll get to that. And so they are sent back to the present in the first timeline, timeline 1, during the Soliana festival, when Elise is first kidnapped, and he's kind of watching over, and he's just like, that blue hedgehog there! That's who I need! Except before he could go chase after him, Amy appears, and she's just like, oh, you're searching for someone too? Let's go search together! And so Silver's entire route is kind of half him and Amy, half him and Blaze. And so Amy's just like, hey, I'll help you search for your person if you help me search for my person. And so he's like, yeah, sure, why not? And so she's like, all right, let me go find Sonic, and then I'll help you find your person. Except, so they are constantly following Sonic, and everywhere that he's going, the Dusty Desert, back to Soliana, all that, except they're always one step behind him. They always arrive as soon as he leaves. And so eventually they return back to Soliana, and that is when they initially run into each other. The first Sonic and Silver battle, when Elise gets kidnapped again, and that battle happens, except obviously Amy is just like, hey, what the fuck, bro? And she's like, I'm not gonna let you kill Sonic, obviously. And so Sonic escapes, and Amy is just like, hey, what the fuck? Sonic would never, be a bad guy. Sonic would never destroy the world. You're wrong, you're an idiot, and I'm leaving you now. And so Silver has to kind of like, oh, maybe, am I wrong? Is what she said true? And so he's like, all right, I must find Sonic again and find out what is going on. And so he follows him to White Acropolis, except once again arrives too late. He arrives after Sonic is sent to the future, and he has his own Egg Genesis battle. And this is the one that kind of doesn't make sense, because it's like, they've already fought the Egg Genesis. It's already been destroyed. I don't know why it's back, but it's back. But he fights it, for whatever fucking reason. Because they just had to reuse that boss battle again anyways. But anyways, after that, he and Blaze head back to Soliana, and Mephiles appears again. And he's just like, hey, your Iblis trigger is at the train station. Go get him! And that's the start of Timeline 2, because that was the point where Sonic returned to the present and started chasing after the train. So Mephiles is just like, he's back in the present, go get him! So Silver takes off after him once again. And so that is the train station battle where Shadow interrupts and Sonic escapes again, but him and Shadow go back in time to find, what happened in the past. Except while Shadow goes after Mephiles, Silver goes after Iblis. And so in his attempt to seal Iblis, it fails. Because he is not one of the chosen royal families. And so when it fails, the king appears and he says that Iblis can only be sealed by someone of the royal family, and he's on the verge of death because, you know, the Solaris project failed and exploded and it killed everybody, because of course it did. And so instead, he seals Iblis's, you know, Soliana's flame, he seals Iblis's flames inside Elise. And instructs her to never cry! Don't know why. And so Silver takes Elise and takes her back outside of the lab. Shadow reconvenes with him. Silver gives Elise the Chaos Emerald that he has because he was told it was a good luck charm, and he's just like, I think you, small child, need this more than me. So he leaves the Chaos Emerald with like a 10-year-old, 10 years in the past, or however the fuck old she is, I don't actually know, as a good luck charm. And then he and Shadow return back to the present in Timeline 2. And so that is when Silver meets back up with Sonic to save Elise, and except she's on the egg carrier and it explodes and she dies. And so once again, double chaos control, portals to time, Sonic goes back to save Elise. Silver, however, returns to the future to fight Iblis with Blaze, because they realize, okay, Sonic is saving the past, so I'm gonna go save my future. I need to destroy the flames. And so he returns 200 years in the future. I'm uncertain exactly what timeline this is, because it doesn't really make it super duper clear. It seems like it would be the timeline 3, obviously, but but so they head back to the volcano to fight Iblis, to destroy the flame core and save the future. Except once again, as within the past, Silver can't seal Iblis. He can't seal the flames because he's not royal family. And so Blaze is just like, nah, I got this. You're an idiot. And she asks him to seal her in time, except he won't do it. So she's just like, fine, I'll do it myself. And so she seals the flames inside herself and then seals herself away into a different timeline, or a different existence. The game doesn't really go into it at all. But that is where Silver's route ends, is Blaze sacrificing herself to seal the flames to remove it from existence. Was limited to just one city, or does he actually destroy the world? He destroys the world. The world is destroyed. The world as a whole is destroyed. I'll explain more how that works in the end. But that is how the game goes. That is how the game gives you the timeline. So, now I will explain it chronologically. Break it down by the timelines. Click. Thank you. Actually, this might be a good time to show the actual timelines so you guys can visually see how this all plays out, and then I will go into detail about it. Alright, so I have broken down this entire timeline. This is how I made sense of all of this, by the way. As I went through, I watched a full walkthrough of every single one of the routes and wrote it all down chronologically to make sense of this. And so now I can give you guys how this works, how this breaks down. 5 fingers a web. Yeah, okay, so this is the more detailed version where I put everything. So this, let me see if I can get the full thing on screen. Almost, kind of, not really. There's a little bit more down here at the end, but ignoring the final curtain call, We'll ignore final curtain call for now, but this is the Sonic 06 timeline chronologically. It is color-coded by the routes. Wherever there's purple is extra characters. So Blaze, Amy, Rouge, anybody that's not Sonic, Silver, or Shadow is broken down. I also broke it down. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. I also broke it down by set events. So set events are moments that happen no matter the timeline. So for example, breaking this down, you have what happens in the past. You have this is when Sonic or Shadow and Silver appear in the past. You have the Solaris project, and you have them returning to the present. Then you have the Soliana Festival here, and all of Robotnik's various attacks, and Elise getting kidnapped, Silver appearing in the present. One thing I was not super duper certain of is when the beginning of Shadow's route actually starts, because a lot of this you can figure out where it connects by, you know, the other people that they interact with, but Shadow's initial beginning and Mephilis's release is kind of off in its own corner. Like, it seems like it would take place before everything else. Like, that just logically, that seems like it makes sense. But it's not made super clear exactly when in the story that happens. So I just kind of had to make an educated guess on this one. But I believe the beginning of Shadows is kind of the beginning of the present timeline. So this is when Silver appears. This is the Robotnik attack on Soliana, Sonic rescuing Elise, and all that. And then this is when Sonic is sent to the future. And so that goes all the way here to Crisis City. So Shadow appearing, Silver, he's already there, Sonic appearing, the Iblis battle. And then over here, you have Silver returning to the future to fight Iblis and destroy the Flame Core. The double Chaos control to return to the present happens here. And the Mephilis battle with Omega appearing happens here. We have not gotten to the final curtain call, so I'm not going to talk about that just yet. So Timeline 1 is over here. And then we have the split off of Timeline 2. And that's where all of this happens. And then finally we have Timeline 3, which is when Sonic saves Elise. And that's the end of Sonic's route. So that's here. And the end of Silver's route, or Shadow's route here. And the end of Silver's route is here. And so that is a full breakdown of the thing. I did simplify it a little bit so that it's easier to kind of parse exactly what happens. So Soliana Castle, the lab below it, and then you have present day. This is the attack on the Soliana Festival, the Scepter going all down here. White Acropolis is what happens here, and then this world is destroyed. Timeline 2 happens here. Once again, egg carrier malfunctions and explodes. Timeline 2, the world ends in destruction. Timeline 3, Sonic returns, saves Elise, the world is no longer destroyed. And then the future is just all Crisis City. Most straightforward of the sections. But that is a visual breakdown of the timeline. You can see why this is confusing as fuck. So, now that you kind of have more of a little bit of a visual of what happens, I'm going to go through it chronologically. Starting with Timeline 1 and the present day at the beginning. So, as I said, I kind of had to take a guesstimate, an educated guess on this one. I believe Rouge stealing the scepter, Mephiles being released, and Shadow and Rouge being sent to the future is the beginning, is the first thing that happens in the timeline. Then you have the Solaris Festival, where Robotnik attacks, Sonic rescues Elise, Silver arrives in Soliana and meets Amy. Then you have Elise getting kidnapped, Sonic meeting with Tails, rescuing Elise from Dusty Desert, Silver and Amy arrive too late, and both groups return to Soliana. That is where the Silver and Sonic battle happen. Elise is kidnapped again, Amy stops Silver, Sonic escapes, Silver chases him to White Acropolis. Then you have the situation in White Acropolis, where Sonic is sent 200 years into the future, and Silver once again arrives too late to confront him. Sonic disappears, Egg Carrier explodes, Elise dies, flames are released incorrectly, Crisis City. That is the original timeline. And then 200 years in the future, you have Silver, he meets with Mephiles, and he travels back to the present. Shadow arrives in the future, Sonic arrives in the future, the Iblis battle, Chaos Emeralds, Omega's on standby, then they use the double Chaos control to return to the present, Shadow battles Mephiles, Omega reactivates, joins the battle, Shadow and Omega follow him back to the present timeline, and that is the end of Timeline 1. So that is the original timeline. That is how how it works without any extra time travel-y things. It's just shit gets fucked. And that is what Silver tries to prevent is this future. So, when they travel back in time, it creates a branching timeline. Alright, on to Timeline 2. So, by them traveling back in time, it creates a branch in the timeline. As I mentioned with this earlier here. So, by traveling through time and going back, it creates a branch. And so this is the end of Timeline 1. Shit's destroyed. That's it. That timeline ends there. So when they return, it causes a branch. And that is when the vast majority of the actual story happens, is in Timeline 2. So, what happens in Timeline 2, starting with Sonic returning shortly after disappearing. So, Eggman just sent him 200 years in the past, Elise is still with him, he has returned to Soliana. And so, for whatever fucking reason, Eggman has decided that he's on a train now, and to keep Sonic from chasing him down immediately, he causes some shenanigans with the Soliana train, and Sonic has to go chase after that to keep people safe. But that's when the train chase and the showdown at the train station happens. That is when Sonic shows up, or Sonic, when Sonic returns, Silver is once again met by Mephiles in Soliana, who tells him, hey, Sonic's back, go chase him down, and so he does. Shadow, at that point, then returns to the present, and he confronts Eggman. He goes straight to Eggman's train and says, hey, what the fuck is going on? And so they have a little conversation about that, and Eggman's like, hey, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, and Shadow's like, what the fuck ever. And so he goes to confront Sonic and Silver, and that is when they all meet at the train station. Sonic escapes again to go rescue Elise. Shadow and Silver goes back to the past, and initially seal Mephiles and Mephiles and Iblis, initially. So, back in the present day, Sonic rescues Elise, returns her to Soliana, Eggman immediately threatens Soliana, and Elise agrees to meet him again. Tails goes to find Sonic to let him know. Shadow and Silver return to the present. Shadow chases down Mephiles while Silver meets up with Sonic, joins him to rescue Elise. Shadow confronts Mephiles, fighting him a second time, and attempting him to seal him in a newly created scepter, except Mephiles breaks out and says that doesn't work. That is when the egg carrier malfunctions, explodes, and Elise dies. Timeline 2, the retry. There's a couple retries. The egg carrier explodes, Elise dies, Sonic and Silver go back in time to... Sonic goes back in time, Silver returns to the future, Crisis City happens, or Silver returns to Crisis City, rather. Fights Iblis again, destroys the Flame Core, attempts to steal Iblis, doesn't work, Iblis does it, or Blaze does it, and vanishes. Nemesis, it's no use. Yes. Retry 2. So this is kind of where timeline 3 breaks off into another situation of time traveling. So Sonic goes back to the egg carrier before it leaves, rescues Elise, escapes to Kingdom Valley. And that is the end of all of those routes. And they think, oh, we've defeated Iblis in the future, we've rescued Elise from dying, everything is fine and dandy, we're all good to go. It's not. It's not at all. Because this is when the final curtain call happens. And this is where it all comes together. So back in the present day, after all this happens, Mephiles gets the final emerald, the final Chaos Emerald that he needs, and the rest just kind of vanish from the others. They just, poof, gone. And then back in Kingdom Valley, where Sonic and Elise are just running through the grass and having a good time, oh no, there's a distraction. Mephiles then appears and beams Sonic in the chest, killing him. This causes Elise to cry. If you'll remember earlier, I mentioned how her father said, Elise, don't cry. She cried now. And this is what finally releases the Flames of Disaster in the proper form. It is not the giant worm that destroys the world, but the flames of Solaris. Mephiles then uses the emeralds that he collected to rejoin with Iblis, once again becoming the sun god Solaris. The timelines are eaten, and everybody is dragged into a space-time rift, where they all discovered, oh no, Sonic is dead. And they realize that the only way to beat Solaris is to bring him back. They're not defeating an actual fucking god without Sonic, because of course they're not. And so after Solaris was formed, all the Chaos Emeralds were scattered to all the edges of the remaining world, and so everybody splits up to go get them. In the game, you run through all of the different maps and areas that you played through, scattered timelines, kind of breaking down, and nothing is quite right. A lot of people are dead, the world is ended. But they go and collect the Chaos Emeralds, bring them back to the Time Rift, and Elise uses the Chaos Emeralds to bring Sonic back as Super Sonic, brings him back from the dead. We're gonna ignore everything else that happens with her. Didn't happen. And then Super Sonic passes that power on to Shadow and Silver as well, and you have the final battle with Solaris. And that is, as per usual, a multi-phase thing. Hey, go back! I didn't include the multiple forms of Solaris. I'm a dummy. Hang on. Let me pull that up. So, this is... There we go. I'll just put that there. I have both of them. This is Solaris Phase 1. This one here. And then once you defeat Solaris Phase 1, you get Solaris Phase 2. And this is the true form of Solaris. Also, just, you know, to throw it out there, because I have this as well. This is Iblis. This is Iblis's true form, not his giant worm form. And, you know, we've obviously seen Mephiles, so there's that. Okay, so anyways, Solaris battle. Supersonic, Super Shadow, Super Silver, you know, they do. A little cowboy hat. I mean, kind of looks like it. So, of course, they defeat Solaris because it's a video game and you can defeat a god, apparently. Sonic and Elise are then sent back. They are sent to a giant black void and then are greeted with the technically the truer form of Solaris, who then himself sends Elise and Sonic back to before the flame was corrupted, before the humans started experimenting on it, and that is when Elise decides to blow out the flame and resets the timeline and erases Solaris's existence and erases everything that happened and yada yada, we've never met, blah blah. And then you have the ending scene with Soliana reset, celebrating a god that they've destroyed for some reason, who doesn't apparently fucking exist anymore, and Sonic looking out over it like, I've just decided to be here for no reason in particular. And so that is the end. That is the end of Sonic 06. That is the full story of Sonic 06. It ends in reset timelines and destroyed gods and destroyed existences and dumb shit. So, final notes and trivia. And this is just extra shit that I was gonna add more of this, but by the time I got to this point of the presentation, I was so fucking done with working on this, I didn't care anymore. But there were some additional notes that I wanted to throw in there, kind of explaining some of just like little bits of trivia that I knew that I discovered, but also like things that I thought were of note regarding its production and all of that. For number one, the main thing I would like to point out, how many fucking times does Elise get kidnapped? I counted 9 times. This bitch was kidnapped 9 fucking times. How many of those were completely fucking pointless and could have been removed entirely and changed nothing? 5 of them! At least! I shit you guys not. I am not even joking when I say there is a moment where she gets kidnapped, rescued, kidnapped again, and rescued again in the same cutscene. And fucking Sonic isn't even the only one to fucking rescue this bitch. Fucking Amy rescues her at one point. I don't even know why they included that entire cutscene. You don't play as Amy at any point. Like, obviously you have the sections with Silver, but this is when she cuts off from Silver and is not with him anymore. So they have an entire fucking cutscene of this bitch getting rescued, kidnapped again, and rescued by Amy, and then kidnapped again. In a cutscene! Do you know how incredibly fucking pointless that was? Do you know how many of these are so fucking incredibly pointless? Do you know how angry I got the amount of times I had to write the words, Elise gets kidnapped again, working on this? I'm not joking. There are multiple points of my notes in this goddamn fucking timeline where I wrote the words, this bitch get kidnapped again. This made me so mad. I was so enraged every single time I had to type those words because it was 9 times and changed nothing. It changed nothing. They could remove them entirely and it would change nothing. It doesn't add like, extra, it doesn't add anything. Like, she immediately just gets kidnapped again. It's so fucking dumb and enraging. Made me so fucking mad. Anyways, another important note that I felt is it probably played a huge part in why the story is all over the fucking place and why, like, the game itself is all over the place, is that the co-creator of the game, Yuki Naka, left the project halfway through. And it caused issues with the story. Because from what I could understand, that there was kind of like a rough draft of the story written out, and then he left the project, and so they tried to kind of fill in the gaps or stuff, and it didn't really work. And so that's an important kind of issue for why the story is such a clusterfuck. Also, there was originally supposed to be a PC port for this, as well as an Xbox 360 and PS3, but it was canceled. Would have been nice to have a PC port! But because the game did so badly, they nixed it. Also, a fun just little trivia, due to translation errors, and I did come across this in the early days, and I was curious about it, but now I have an answer. Due to a translation error, the Scepter of Darkness was called the Book of Darkness multiple times. Just in the files, not in the actual game. But if you've ever heard it referred to as the Book of Darkness, that is why. Even though there's clearly no Book of Darkness. There were some theories early on in the days, I remember, that people theorized that the Book of Darkness was a separate item that was going to be tied into it, but it was apparently just a translation error for the Scepter. What was the Bible? No! Also, and this is a very important detail regarding Disrepair House, Metal Sonic, as well as a few additional characters, I don't know who, it wasn't mentioned who, but specifically Metal Sonic, was planned to have a playable episode. You were going to, not only was Metal Sonic supposed to be part of this game, he was supposed to be playable. And he was going to have... it was considered, it was also, considered to possibly be DLC, added later as DLC, additional episodes as well for other characters, but due to how rushed the game was, as well as the reception after it was released, these plans were scrapped. So the entire section with Metal Sonic was also scrapped. I feel like there's a lot of story that was planned in there that could have made a lot of sense with a lot of situations that could have benefited this game if they hadn't rushed it out. I would love to see a remake, like just a total and complete like redo of this game with all of the scrapped mechanics and episodes and characters and lore. Because like clearly there's so much lore here that they just cut out for time. I would love to see what that was. Like even if they just release it as like notes, like an art book almost even kind of situation. I would love to know what was originally planned for this. And the characters and the lore that was all cut out. There were also plans for a day-night cycle that was also scrapped due to the rushed nature, and those, funnily enough, were later used for Sonic Unleashed. So the day-night cycle, the Werehog whole thing, was originally came from Sonic 06. But was just not implemented, so they just used it for a different game. Also, an early draft of the story, which was written by Shiro Maekawa, more directly, and this is what I mentioned earlier, more directly related Sonic 06 to Sonic Rush. And that was supposed to explain Blaze's role better. So, again, another thing that I would have liked to have seen. Like, even if they just release it in, like, written draft form, I would like to know how the fuck Blaze got to this world and how she got into how she got to Soliana, how she met Silver, how she got involved in this whole situation, where she went afterwards. Because, like, if you know the Sonic comics, you know that Blaze comes from her own world, where they have the Soul Rings instead of the Chaos Emeralds, and she is a princess in that world. And I believe that explains why she was able to seal Iblis and the Flames when Silver could not, because she is royalty, possibly connected to at least the Flames in some way, because she's, well, Blaze, she is a fire-wielding cat. And so I feel like there's a connection there between Soliana, Solaris, and Blaze. And so, again, I would like to know more of what the fuck that was, but it was, obviously that was also scrapped and rewritten and just cut out entirely. And, yeah, but that is the end. That is the full presentation. That is the entirety of Sonic 06. That's everything that I know about it. And, yeah. So, thank you for listening and being here for my presentation. I hope you have learned a lot, and now there will be a test. I'll be passing out the papers right now to make sure that you guys listened and understood everything that happened. This test will be the entirety of your grade, and thank you for coming to my TED Talk about Sonic 06, and thank you for letting me get all of this shit off my chest finally. You are now Lord. I guess now, if you guys, now is the Q&A session, so, but yes, okay, so now is the point where I will answer any unanswered questions. So, what do you got? Give them all at me. Whatever questions you ask throughout the stream, throw them at me now, and I will answer to the best of my abilities. I know, I saw a few that I kind of intentionally ignored. How are you feeling now that you shared this? Like, a weight has been lifted. Like, a weight's been lifted, that's how. I've been... I don't have to research this shit anymore, and I don't have to worry about this stream anymore, but also, now I can be like... Obviously, I'm gonna edit the, this whole situation... this whole stream, well, not the whole stream, but obviously I'm gonna edit this section into a video to put on the main channel so that I can point to it and be like, you want Sonic 06 lore? I got you Sonic 06 lore. I could just be like, go there. I could just be like, there, all of your questions are answered there. And also, I don't have to think about this anymore. I've been thinking about this stream literally since I started VTubing, because I promised Saib that if I hit 1,000, I would do this stream, and then I hit 1,000, and now I've done this stream, and this weight has been lifted from my brain. Also, this model is done, so that weight has been lifted off my stream. But also, I have been saying for like 2 years now that I am gonna get into it. Every time somebody asks me something Sonic 06 related, I'm like, I'm gonna get into this in a whole ass stream. There's gonna be a full stream dedicated to getting into the roots of Sonic 06, so just wait till then. And so now, we have been in the roots of Sonic 06. Can't believe I did this. I can't believe you did this to me! It's all your fault! You're in charge of a remake of this game, what would you change? Everything! Fucking everything! I would remove, like, more than half of Elise's stupid kidnapping bullshit. I would go further into, like, Silver and Blaze's backgrounds and stories, and, like, more Crisis City. I would... Like, a lot of Shadow's story actually is fine. Shadow is fine. That's the only one that I would consider fine. Silver's entire route is just... Oh, Sonic went that way. Oh, I'm too late. Oh, Sonic went that way. Oh, I'm too late. Oh, Sonic went that way. I'm too late. So I'd probably change his entire route to like something that's actually meaningful and not just chasing Sonic around. And Sonic's route, maybe less re-kidnapping of Elise and maybe more, I don't know, doing something that's not that. What would you keep? Shadow's entire thing. I would keep Crisis City, obviously. And everything that happens in the Crisis City sections are fine. Everything that happens in the Crisis City sections are fine, lore-wise. I would keep the final curtain call. That one's obviously fine. Except for that one thing. That would be gone. Like, having the Chaos Emeralds revive Sonic is fine. He's the main character. There are theories about him potentially being like a descendant of a god. So I accept that theory personally. And finally get 400 followers and 2 years late. Seems to be a lot of inconsistency. Like that was one of the reasons it failed. No, I think the reason it failed is because the gameplay itself is bad. Like, don't get me wrong, I know the actual gameplay mechanics are fucking ass and shit and balls. And infuriating. That is a well-known fact that actually playing Sonic as 06 is infuriating. And so, like, A, I just wouldn't rush it to begin with, and B, I would have any kind of quality assurance at all, period. Clearly, they did not have any. But also, yeah, no, like, the rushed nature is, it's inconsistent, they reuse a lot of shit that doesn't make sense. A lot of the stories are just chasing after someone, being too late for something. It's, like, the bits that do have lore are good, but, like, how amazing are you for getting a compliment? God damn it. Someone's not being able to catch up to the fastest thing alive? Yeah. Yeah. Also, I would make this, like, side characters more involved, because, like, you meet up. Like, again, all you have to do is look at Shadow's route. Honestly, Shadow's route is kind of like the perfect summation of what the game should have been. Because, you know, you have the main character, obviously Shadow himself doing most of it, but Omega is just as involved, Rouge is just as involved, like, the story stays focused and consistent and, like, keeps propelling the story forward rather than just doing the same thing over and over and over again. So, like, if they had... I don't know if they just did Shadow's route first and had to fucking rush through the other two or something, but if they had just made Sonic and Silver's route more like Shadow's, I think it would have been better. Also, if they had, you know, fixed the game mechanics and not rushed it. Do anything with the ramifications of the fact Elise can't cry as she notably stoker. Okay, yeah, right. That's the other thing that I wanted to mention. Thank you for bringing that up, actually. So, Sonic or Elise. Here's another one of my really big issues that the game never touches on at any point in anything. The entire crux of the story is that Iblis is released incorrectly because she fucking dies. So, clearly having her... whatever... container? I'm just gonna call her a container. Having the container destroyed releases the flames incorrectly. Why does having her cry release it correctly? Why is that? Why is that? Why is that? Why is that a thing? Why is that the tactic to releasing the flames of disaster correctly? That doesn't make sense. I don't know why. Also, why... On that note, if all you need is a princess to cry to release these flames, why wait until she's an adult to do it? Why go through? There's a lot riding on this fucking, like, whole shenanigan, and that's the other thing that's kind of the problem with this story, is it's convoluted as fuck, and you don't know if Mephilis's plans from the get-go was to have Sonic and Elise do all of this run around and escape and da-da-da-da-da, just for the soul, like, so that he can kill Sonic and make her cry that way, or if it's a situation where he was trying to do something else, but it kept failing miserably because Silver sucks at his job, and so he just finally went, fine, I'll do it myself. It doesn't really touch on that fact of what that plan was, but also, like, again, this whole plan of go back to kill Sonic to make the princess cry, to release the flames, just, it doesn't do a good job of explaining why that is at all, in any way, shape, or form. Like, again, if you want, she was literally a child when the flames were originally sealed in her. I feel like if the whole point of making a girl cry is how you get what you want, then you could just go back further into when she was a child and be like, both your parents are dead and everyone sucks and everyone's looking at you to fail. That would probably make a child cry. It's probably very easy to make someone cry. Like, why even wait that long? No sadness, not heartbreak, but like, it doesn't even insinuate that it's necessarily heartbreak that does it. It's just, all they say is that she can't cry. That's it. Like, the only thing is just making her cry. And like, cause even as a kid, her dad is just like, hey, I know your mom's dead, but you can't cry about it. Never shed tears. The whole point is that she cannot shed a tear. Because as soon as she sheds a tear, that's how the flames are released. And it's like, why is that? Why? Why? But why though? And it never explains why. It never touches on why. It never even gives any slight indication of why that is even the way to go about that. And that bothers the shit out of me, because as somebody who has gone through an extensive amount of effort to explain this fucking story at all, this was not an easy task. Just so that we all know, it was not an easy task to make sense of this. But I have done my goddamn damnedest to make it make sense. And so the fact that there's so much shit that they just throw out there with no regards to whether or not it makes any goddamn sense at all drives me up a fucking wall. But anyways, yeah, so as far to actually answer your question about whether there are any actual, like, fucking ramifications to why she can't cry? No. No, not at all. None whatsoever. She's not known as a particularly hard-ass or stoic or anything princess. She's just known as the average fucking just friendly, loving princess. So it doesn't play in, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't anything. Go back in time and show yourself in 2006 this presentation. Do you think it would create a divergent timeline in your own life, or do you think you'd probably end up in the same place? In 2006, if you told me I got dragged down this route this hard in 2006, I know that eventually you make this model and get this far down this rabbit hole. Yeah, I don't think I'd be very happy. Because here's the thing. Here's the thing about me and Sonic. I've mentioned this a few times before. I was not originally the Sonic person in the friend group. I got dragged into this fandom kicking and fucking screaming. I resisted Sonic for so fucking long. And it wasn't until, like, God, I guess at least like 2010, 2011, when I finally finally fully got dragged in. But yeah, no, I resisted Sonic until I could no longer. So in 2006, if you showed me this, I would be so fucking mad. I'd be so fucking mad. I just accepted it over time. I'm just like, I guess this is where I am now. I guess this is my fate. I just accepted it. I think, actually, more than anything, if you told me I made this model in Blender, that's the part that I would have been interested in. Like, if you told me that I made this model and that I made it by myself, purely in Blender from scratch by myself, that's the part I would be interested in. Because I did try Blender back then. Way back when. I did attempt Blender back in high school. I just gave up. And then I didn't touch it for years. And then I came back to it with VTubing, and that's when it finally clicked. So if you told me that I eventually get a handle on Blender, I think that about sums it up, you guys. I think that is finally, we have finally gotten through. We've finally done Sonic 06, the timeline stream, all that information, everything that I know about Sonic now, you guys know. If you come up with any other questions that wasn't answered, then feel free to ask them, and I'll answer to the best of my abilities. And yeah. Oof, I hear a dog boof barking. So, yeah, so once again, thank you guys for waiting so long for me to do this. I know, like I said, we hit 1K like 2 years ago. I've been working on this model for at least a year now. It's been a long time coming, and we've finally done it, so thank you guys for your patience on this one. I know, like I said, I know it took me a long time. I know it got pushed to the side a lot. I've been doing a lot of projects. A lot of shit's been going on. So I appreciate you guys holding out on this one for me. And now that we have finally got it done, it's finally done. And it can finally be marked off the to-do list. This was the last big, huge, major project on my to-do list. And now I can finally check it off. But also, I hope you enjoyed my presentation. I hope you learned something. And like I said, I will be editing the VOD down into a video for the main channel afterwards. So if there's any parts that you missed or wanted to go back and watch it again, that will be it'll be up as a full video later on. And if you're watching this later, YouTube, be sure to like and comment and subscribe and let me know what you think. And if you played Sonic 06 back when it initially released, and if you were a lore person, and if you were a fellow Mephiles fan, I also want to know that, because we're friends now. I want the original Mephiles fans to shout it out, because you can finally definitely learn to Thing or 5. Fuck yeah!